All right, let's talk Michigan Wolverines football. Obviously, this rebuilding season has had its fair share of ups and downs, but like I mentioned, it is a rebuilding year. Michigan, all eyes focused on the future. How do they revamp after losing a big chunk of talent and a big chunk of their coaching staff this past offseason? It looks like the Wolverines are preparing to make an incredible move for their future. Great sign for Michigan. I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, going into this season, it was a rebuilding year, no doubt about it. There was some optimism. Maybe they could find a way to put some wins together. But when you really take a step back, it's obvious their struggles are clear. They're just missing talent at a number of key positions. It's just what happens, right? It's the modern college football world, but you can't sit back. You got to be active and do what you can to rebuild. And it looks like Michigan may be about to pull off a massive move. And one of the best prospects for the future, quarterback Bryce Underwood, currently LSU commit, is tied to Michigan in this latest move. Let's pull up this report courtesy of SI.com. In order to land a big fish like Underwood, it's going to take more than money. Michigan is going to have to show that they're willing to put the right pieces in place on both sides of the ball. It seems like the Wolverines are taking a big step in the right direction with the recruitment of current Pitt commit Elijah Dotson. The four-star safety and current teammate of Bryce Underwood has been committed to Pitt since May, but it sounds like Michigan is now the clear favorite to ultimately land the Belleville prospect. To be clear, Michigan potentially landing a guy like Dotson is a big deal regardless of whether or not Underwood decides to flip from LSU to Michigan, and that is true, of course. But the fact that his high school teammate may elect to stay home in Ann Arbor would obviously be another major selling point for the Wolverines as they try to land their quarterback of the future in the 2025 class. This report hits a nail on the head, obviously, getting a player like Dotson. Good addition to this roster going forward, flipping him from Pitt. But it does show that this program, whether it's to Underwood or other potential quarterback prospects, Michigan is not going away when it comes to acquiring top-end talent. I think it's a great sign for the Wolverines going forward. Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. But first, Michigan fans in the comment section below. Obviously, this season, not exactly the way we probably all hoped, even though it was a rebuilding year. Give us your biggest bright spot. What's one player that's really exceeded your expectations? A guy that no one really was expecting a lot out of, but has done a really good job for the Wolverines this year. Give us that guy in the comment section below. But Miles, what are your thoughts on this latest news out of Michigan?
Yeah, Nick, I think this would be huge for the Wolverines because, as the article alluded to, and it kind of, I cut off a little bit early from that point, but it talks about how they have the money. They're willing to give upwards of $5 million to get their next quarterback in the future. The big chunk of change, but they're not skimping when it comes to spending money to get a quarterback. Because you look at this team, biggest hole on the team right now, quarterback position. You got to get a guy that can do everything. You can't just have a guy that can run pretty good and throw just okay, or a guy that can throw pretty good and not do anything with his legs. You need a guy that can do everything. That's what Bryce Underwood can do. He can really do just about anything you need him. He's a top tier quarterback prospect for this team. So I think anything you can do to get him is great for the Michigan Wolverines. But the other aspect of this article is Dotson in himself is no slouch. So I think no matter what way you slice it, this is a big move for the Michigan Wolverines, showing that they're able to get some top tier talent and, allure kind of Bryce Underwood to come to this team as well, because you can get all of the best players all over the country. I think it's easy for a team to do that. And, other top recruits will be like, okay, that's pretty cool. They've got this really good, highly touted player coming to their program. I think this would be some good things. But what head coach Sharon Moore, what they're focusing on now, I think it's even better. When you get a top tier recruit and their friends, teammates with somebody else, it just adds a little bit more. I think it just means more. It's like, hey, this guy I know, I trust. He's flipping from the school that he's going to. We've played ball together all throughout high school, and he's going to stay home and go to Michigan. There may be something cooking at Michigan that we need to be a part of together. And I think that's just the little added wrinkle, as they say, put into this recruiting cycle if they're able to get a guy like Dotson, which is now saying that they're the front runners to do. I believe they will get him. So I think that is getting them on the road to getting Bryce Underwood as well. I think LSU, they've been all right, but there's been ups and downs points this season. I think they go play Alabama this week. If Alabama is able to beat LSU, another loss on the record for them. That's 3 on the season. They're pretty much nixed out of the college football playoff. I think that could play a lot into it as well. So I think there's a lot of things trending in the right direction for the Wolverines. I think overall, a lot of things cooking, and Dotson is the next thing in line here. If they're able to land him, I think Bryce Underwood is looking more and more likely as the days pass by.
You know, it's interesting when you look at the Michigan Wolverines numbers and you try and say, okay, what is the major difference between 2023 when they obviously won the national title and 2024? Obviously, all the talent left, a lot of coaches left, things like that going to the NFL. Running back, obviously, Corum's gone, a lot of defensive players, receivers. The reality is the quarterback position, and it sounds so simplistic, but it's just so true. Last year, they averaged 213 yards passing per game, and this year they're averaging about a buck 33, right? You're talking about an 80-yard drop off. That is a significant statistical output. You go from top third in the Big Ten to second to last in the Big Ten this year. And it sounds so simple, but that's really what it is. And it comes down to quarterback play, and they don't have it right now. Like, let's be totally honest. They just don't have a passing attack worthy of a ranked team, let alone a top contending team. And making sure they find their quarterback of the future, whether it's a true freshman or not, is so critical for the Wolverines this offseason. And I think trying to go aggressively after Underwood is a really smart approach. But honestly, even if it fails with Underwood, I think you also have to go out of basically the next man up after that. You got to get good at the quarterback position if you want to go back to contending. And I think the Wolverines will, because one of the things we talk about, again, going back to the NFL comparison, is that when you're in a rebuilding year or you're a rebuilding team, it's easy to lose the energy. It's easy to lose the momentum. And in college football, if you lose that energy and momentum, that can really hurt your recruiting, right? We saw this with the Detroit Lions. Obviously, Michigan fans are very well over the Lions. For a number of years, they just were constantly rebuilding. You have maybe one good year out of every 10, but then they were always just struggling, trying to rebuild. They brought in the new coaching staff with Dan Campbell a number of years ago, and they started putting some energy and momentum behind it, and things really took off, right? Harbaugh brought that same thing for the Wolverines. Obviously, it took him a little while to get the energy and momentum, but when it came together, obviously we've seen it the last 2 or 3 years before he left for the National Football League. The one concern I was worried about with Michigan in this rebuilding year was like, okay, how could Sharon Moore hold on to some momentum and energy in the recruiting game? The fact that they're the heavy favorite, and I agree with you, I think they're going to flip Dotson, is a great sign that the momentum and energy is not lost yet. Sharon Moore and his staff will have to build off of this, and will have to continue maintaining their current recruits. Will have to do a great job in the transfer portal, but securing, it seems like they're going to eventually, securing the flip of Dotson up to Ann Arbor, I think it's the first big sign we've seen this Michigan team bounce back from a disappointing season that's currently in progress, of course, to make sure they hold on to that recruiting momentum that Harbaugh brought up to Michigan. This is a great sign for Sharon Moore, and if they continue down this path, they may end up getting a guy like Underwood or another top quarterback.